So what I did with that step handrail, which I've still got on the sprue,
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can see that. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's sort of. Yeah.
I've left the structure in the middle because this handrail was broken in several places.
Was it right?
So I've left the sprue in the middle and then solvented where the brakes are, which has worked as it is. But I fear as soon as I try to
John, can you hold it a bit close to the camera? That's better. Yeah.
I fear that when I try to cut it off with the sprue, it'll break again. It's very weak.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've had the same problem, and yeah, I've done exactly the same on these longer handrails. I've dropped a little bit of solvent on, and it's fixed it, but it's kind of created there's a little gap around it, so I'm not quite sure. It's so small. I might be able to get a little bit of.
Just out of interest, you were talking about those rails, the end rails that I haven't yet fitted, which are here. They've got the same arrangement with half a sprue going over the ends of the pins.
Yeah, that's really weird the way they've done that. Very difficult to work with. I'm not happy because I can't find my little scraper. Somebody's been in and had it. Before you say it, John, it wasn't my dog.
Yeah. I wouldn't be so sure.
No, she's never been up here.
Oh, she not?
Not beagle proof.
Oh, right. Well, you got that event to happen then.
Yeah, got that to look forward to.
Might it be an idea to cut it off flush with that tab and then just glue a bit of micro rod or a sliver off on the end rather than spending a lot of time trying to pare it away, and then just when you get to the point you nearly done it snaps.
Well, that's what you're up against. I've left it on for now. I daren't.
Yeah.
So, not quite sure.
Well, it's just easy to bite the bullet, cut it off flush, and then just glue another bit on the end.
It's not too difficult. What I'd use some small sprue snips. So I snip the half sprue down till it's close enough, and then finish it off with a scalpel.
Okay.
But it wasn't onerous.
I might have a go then in a minute.
I mean, the interesting thing is that those end rails should have the reduced sort of little, I don't know what you call it, little spigot.
Yeah.
Both ends, and it's only got it on one end because the holes in the end rails are smaller than the rail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So actually, it's not easy fitting the other end either.
I think what I may end up doing is I may end up just fitting them and not bothering with the pins, because they'll kind of self-locate in the little.
Yeah, you're probably right actually.
Just all a bit too.
Yeah, do you know what? They're actually a lot longer on the solid part of the rail. It's actually longer than if you put it up against the foot plate, the foot walkway.
Yeah,
they're actually longer. They're the full width of the foot walkway.
Right. Okay.
It won't work, so you're gonna have to cut them down anyway.
Yeah. Bit shabby, that, isn't it?
It is a bit. Shabby. Yeah. Who chose this kit to build?
I did.
Some masochist, I think.
but I don't know who decided to copy.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good choice if it's a real bugger kit, because anything else we do is going to seem really easy by comparison.
Tell you what, yeah. I mean, some of the modern tooling that they have, particularly the aircraft kits, is just fantastic. It just, it almost just clips together. I mean, you still get some seams. Have you heard of a toy company from, I think it's China or Japan, called Bandai? Anybody heard of them?
Yes, yeah, vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, well, they make they do Star Wars kits, really detailed kits of things like the Millennium Falcon and you know, the little characters R2D2 and the like, and the stormtroopers.
All right.
You can actually put them together without glue. They're
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. I've built the Millennium Falcon. I haven't put any glue on it at all. They're really, the fit and the engineering is incredible.
What sort of scale are they, Chris?
I can't remember. I'll have a look in a minute because I've got the box up here. It's not like one of the great big sort of dinner plate type. Let me just take this camera out a bit. It's not like one of the big dinner plate type Millennium Falcons. It's a little tiny one.
Hmm.
But the detail is just,
Well, it's all the more impressive then if they can do it on the small.
yeah, it really is impressive. I'll fetch it when I go for a coffee. It's really good. I need to go and fetch some more tools as well. Bring them onto this side. Did you sand all the little seams off the railings, John?
No, they were. I looked at the prototype. They were on the prototype.
They're on the prototype, I think. Yeah, a length of steel with a seam down the side. So I think, Mick, over the weekend, I might start looking at the cottages. A number of people said that they want the cottages, and I know you did on your email, so might start having a look at that.
What a star.
Don't mean I'm going to finish them, but I'll start looking. Yeah, I think that'll be quite a nice little kit. Have you built one already?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've modified it to do just half of the total.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sort of
But
half.
it really takes a long time.
Yeah.
Needless to say, it's not finished yet.
Yeah. Is it part heavy then?
Yeah, I think. I mean, the Delphine's kits are renowned for their sturdiness.
Yeah.
But this is a personal view. I think it goes too far.
Yeah.
I don't think they need to be quite as sturdy as John's designed them.
Yeah. Yeah. They're pretty well over engineered, aren't they? I've built the large station building, and it's the same. It's really weighty when it's done.
Yeah, yeah.
I normally overcomplicate them by putting all lights and stuff in, but which is why I've started doing the kind of the kits without the textures on, because it's really handy from a test build point of view. When I did the terraced house, I realized I'd put the name of the back wall and the yard wall on the wrong parts. I got them swapped round. I mean, you'd have worked it out. Hopefully people would have worked it out. I was able to correct that before I put any into production.
Well, you can never make, you can make too many assumptions.
You can, yeah. Yeah. So I try and make it as sensible as I can.
I've quite frequently found that no matter how careful I am about wording, someone always finds a way of taking an alternate meaning.
Yeah. Yes.
It's normally John.
Well, yeah, well, I've got first-hand experience of that, to be honest. He's gone. He's disappeared, so that was wasted.
It wasn't wasted.
Oh, right, oh no, he's there. Right.
He's just simply got his back to us.
I'm just cooking my breakfast. So I've just laid my soldering iron on my finger.
Yeah. Yeah, bit of pork.
Bit of pork, yeah.
Chris, what's that at the top of your board in the top right-hand corner?
This.
No, put your hand out to your right. No, the other hand, right hand, down, just on your edge of your board, your steel. There's a bit of the kit there. Is that what you're looking for?
This.
No. Go
Oh,
to
this bit.
that's it.
Yeah, that's just a piece of rail that I've just been tidying up.
All right, sorry.
No, that's
I
okay.
thought that was a bit you
It's,
looking for.
you almost begin to think I didn't know my right from my left then. It's because it's really weird when you're looking yourself in the camera at the same time and trying to find where your hands are. Yeah, that's a piece that I just tidied up.
All right,
And I
sorry,
realised
that was the bit you were
no, that's
it's the
okay.
bit
That's
you're looking
okay.
for.
And what I realised is that it's actually part 17 that I wanted, not part 18. So I shall start with that one now.
Can you tell us about your experiences with your laser cutter?
Yeah, what do you want to know?
Well, everything basically.
Everything. Well, don't
Yeah.
put your hand in front of it because it hurts. I think
Well,
that's
yeah,
that's
that's
probably one of the key lessons. But it doesn't bleed. Yeah, it just cauterizes.
Yeah.
So it
cauterizing.
makes you jump a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
What size model have you got? How big a wattage?
it's a big laser cutter. It's a 700 by 500 bed,
All right.
and it's an 80-watt tube. So when I was researching this, there's laser cutters out there that come under the name of a K40, and they're quite small. They'll cut sort of an A4 sort of size piece of material, and they're brilliant. But when I was looking at them, what I realized pretty quickly was that you buy it and then you have to completely upgrade it to make it something decent if you want to do something properly with it. So you'll hear guys going, yes, I've got a K40 and I've replaced the tube and I've replaced the controller and I've replaced the stepper motors, and you go on and on and on, and then eventually you find all he's got is a K40 box. Everything else has been replaced. So there's little things that I particularly wanted. One, I wanted a fairly powerful tube because I don't just want to cut card with it. I want to cut ply, and it'll cut quite comfortably, cut through 12mm ply. It's quite smoky when you do, but it will cut it. And I wanted one with an electric Z-axis. So you have to bring the lens, the laser beam, into the focal length of the material that you're working on, or bring the focal length into the right place, because you're let me just swap my cameras because I'm doing all these hand gestures and you can't see them. Switch camera on here. Yeah, so what you've got is your lens focuses the laser down to a point.
Yeah.
As soon as it hits that point, it starts to converge again. So you've got a sweet spot in the middle of the lens, which is the bit that you need to focus either on the surface or kind of just below the surface of the material.
Yeah,
So
understand that. Yeah.
you get a rudimentary little piece of plastic that comes, stick the plastic in and then bring the material up until the plastic just is an interference fit between the bottom of the lens and the material. And that it kind of works. But it was about 19mm, and then I identified that the focal length of my lens was 18.5. So that might not sound much, but 0.5 mm can make a difference. So, and then you have air blowing into the lens nozzle. So they come with most of them come with the compressor. A lot of the K40s don't. So you need an air assist. So that's another thing you have to add on. Some of the nozzles don't have air assist capability. So that's another piece you have to go out and buy. And what happens is the air blows the debris out of the cut and keeps it clean.
Yeah.
So particularly when you're cutting timber, because it's burning obviously and lots of smoke, and it serves a bit of a dual purpose, that it blows the muck out and it stops the muck getting back up onto the lens.
Yeah.
Because if the lens gets dirty, then it just dissipates your power. So I've got an electric Z-axis, which is really, really useful because you're moving around all the time. You need a compressor, you need an extractor. So they have a vent on the side. The little K40s have just a 4-inch vent. Mine's got a big 6-inch vent on it, and you extract all the fumes out. So you probably don't want to be doing this in your dining room. well, not for long anyway. And then what you'll find is that these Chinese imports, which is mine is, by the way, they kind of work. What they do apparently is they go to the tube manufacturers, and the tube manufacturers will have certain tubes that don't meet their standard, but they will fire. So you can cut with them, and they buy those tubes really cheap,
Yeah.
chuck them into the casing, and then sell them on
Yeah.
eBay and Amazon and various others. So you're in a bit of a lottery as to how effective your tube is. I think I've been really lucky because mine's seems quite good, but it's supposed to be an 80-watt laser. So I suspect I've probably got about a 45 or 50-watt laser, because the sort of the substandard tubes don't deliver the same kind of output.
Mm.
So that's
Still on the original tube.
I'm still on the original tube, yes, and a new tube's going to be ordered next week, and that'll be quite interesting because I'll buy it from a tube manufacturer, so I know it'll be top dollar, and it'd be quite interesting because I can see me having to reconfigure all my cut settings because it'll just blast through everything. That's my expectation. And the next thing to look out for, and this is really where the studying comes in, how to use these tools properly, is how to set the thing up so that it's cutting vertically and it's cutting accurately and all the mirrors are aligned. Because the tube runs along the back, it fires into a mirror that's at 45 degrees, which fires into another mirror that sits on the carriage that's at 45 degrees, fires across to the mirror that sits on the head, which is still at 45 degrees, but it's downwards. So it kind of comes round the corner and then downwards.
Yeah.
So everything has to be aligned because the carriage is moving. So if the laser is not firing parallel to the carriage, then as you move the carriage around, the laser moves around on the mirror, and you can get extreme situations where the laser misses the mirror completely, and then of course stops working, or it's not in the center of the mirror, and that's where you want it, so that it comes down in the center of the nozzle. So
Yeah.
that's probably the most fundamental thing. Yeah, if you get it set up, and there's techniques you can use to get it set up. If you get it set up properly from the get-go, then you'll have a lot more success than if you just try and use it out the box.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of little jigs and stuff that you can get, or you can download and make, which are really, really useful. There's a guy called Russ Sadler on YouTube, and he's an ex-engineer, and some of the stuff he produces is fantastic. He's really gone the extra mile in terms of understanding lasers and the way they work. Particularly if you want to engrave, because I don't do any engraving with mine at the moment. So that's another skill, different altogether to cutting. If you want to engrave pictures in timber and stuff like that, then it's quite a science, but it's interesting. It's interesting.
Well, it's a bit like setting a 3D printer up,
Yeah.
If you get the basics right, it makes life further down the line so much easier.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you can see I've got a resin 3D printer behind me there, and
All right.
if
Do
you
you
don't,
use it much?
not a great deal, because the printed circuit board, the control board failed on it. So I've got a new one. They sent me a new one. I just haven't fitted it yet. And to be honest, I was saying to Alistair a while back, it's quite cold out here.
You need about 20, 25 degrees.
Yeah, so it's all right in the summer.
Put a jacket on it or something like, or heated jacket, something like that to keep
Yeah.
it warm.
I've done some chimney pots, which I think I showed you the other week. So, and I've messed around with some APS ramps. Is it APS? AWS.
AWS, yeah.
AWS. They didn't come out very well.
Mm.
So yeah, I've done a little bit. I mean, I was trying to get my head around Fusion 360. That's a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, agreed. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of these things, the more you use them, then, I have to relearn it every time I go back to it. So, but yeah.
I looked at sort of SketchUp and so forth, and I thought by the time I spend all the time on SketchUp learning that, and it's quite all right for basic things, but if you want to get more complicated, so I thought I'll just bite the bullet and start on Fusion 360. And yes, it's frustrating on times, especially when it tells you you've got a problem, but it doesn't tell you what the problem is, you know.
Yeah. There's good videos online, isn't there?
Yeah, there's lots of them. Lars Christensen, not Christensen.
He's
Yeah,
the guy.
he's a good one. And there's another guy, a young lad, I can't remember his name, but it's everything's orange in his videos, you know. And,
Is he Dutch?
No, he's American. Maybe Dutch descent, but yeah, his explanations are pretty good as well.
Yeah.
It's fine. Lars is good, but he does tend to go on a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a few of what I tend to do is I watch a little bit of it and go, I've got it now. Piece of cake, this. And I go try it and find out actually I haven't got it. But,
watch it 3-4 times and then try it.
Yeah. To be honest, I did. I've made a little a servo mount for semaphore signals. That's like a plug and socket arrangement, very similar to the Jurassic ones that you can buy, but they're wooden ones. And I've made one for 4mm, so it takes 2 micro servos, and it's got a little socket. You put the socket in the baseboard, and then the whole thing lifts out, so that you can take it out with a signal and put it in a box when you're moving your layout around if it's an exhibition layout. But more importantly, you can take it out and put it on the bench and put it in a little stand to set the servos up. So you don't have to kind of...
I think Dave McCabe done something like that.
Is it yet?
You know, Electric Dave, because he's doing a lot on signalling, Great Western. I think he's designed something like that, and also for the little ground signals as well. So
so John's developed one for ground signals for 7mm. I don't know if he's still here. Is he?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
He's deliberately got his back to us.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I've finished looking about with that cylinder. It's ready to go. I'll just spray this, and then I'll take a break if that's all right with everybody, because I can go and get a coffee, and not only that, I can go and find where my scraper is, because I'm quite attached to it quite clearly. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick a primer down on this cylinder. I'll just change my my camera around so you can see the. Not that watching paint dry is very exciting, I might add. So here we go. Here's the cylinder. I have been, while we were just chatting about lasers. I mean, does that answer everything you wanted about lasers, Paul?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Don't do it. That'd be my advice.
It's like everything, you know. It's one thing talking about it. It's another thing actually, you know, better do it in practice, and it's learning all the tips and tricks, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like you say, setting it up is, you know, you're always, you know, you get a new toy in the box that, I want to play with this, and you end up rushing into it, and it doesn't work properly, and this and that, and then you think, oh, you know, almost, you know, put it to one side and let it.
Yeah,
what you need to do.
Right. Don't get me wrong. So, some people have got K40s. There's a guy that has a YouTube channel called Warthog Project, and he's built a replica of an A-10 ground attack aircraft cockpit, and he's laser cut all of his panels. It's absolutely fantastic what he's done if you're into that kind of thing. And so he what you can do, you can take a white piece of acrylic, cut it out to the shape of your panel, spray it black, and then just laser the paint off, so you end up with white writing showing out through through the black, which is really neat. And if you use like a translucent acrylic, you can backlight it. So he puts green LEDs on the back. He builds these things up in like multiple layers. And then when he switches the lights on in the cockpit, it all shows green like it does in the real thing. It's absolutely incredible. And he's doing it on the K40, you know, so it's not all about having the biggest and best. But when you watch it, you can clearly see that he's got it set up properly.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put some primer on this. So I'm going to use an AK primer. I've talked about this before. It's a micro filler as well, so it does build a little bit when you spray it. It doesn't build to the extent where it'll hide those ridges, though, John.
Will it?
I think that noise is coming from you, John, isn't it? That buzzing.
What noise?
Yeah. Just mute out a sec.
Somebody was asking about ground signals.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. There we go.
So there's the one with a servo underneath. I haven't finished the painting stuff yet of it, but the advantage is that you can take it away from the board by dropping it down. That has a socket that goes in the baseboard, and then it just clicks up underneath it. But that's 7mm rather than 4.
I hadn't seen that before, John. The signal looks great.
I'm still waiting for some more etches. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you're waiting for some more laser cutting then.
No. Well, I am that as well, but less said about that, the better.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Don't want to upset me anymore, or you'll never get it.
No, quite.
One of the things that you want to do with any of your paints is you want to make sure you've given them a good stir, or a good shake up. Particularly this stuff, it settles, and you can see it sort of settled on the bottom.
Yeah.
So you make sure you've given it a good agitation. Just mute your microphone, will you, John? I think I'm getting a buzzing from you. Yeah, real buzzing.
Yeah.
Don't know whether you've got something switched on near the microphone that's causing it. Right. So I'm going to use my trusty H&S for this. See what pressure we've got. That'll do. This is the next challenge with this stuff, is getting the lid off. There we go. It's quite smelly as well, this stuff, but I'll just turn the extractor on. Just tell me if it's really noisy. Is that really bad? Is that noisy?
Yeah. But if you speak loudly, we can hear over you, Chris.
Well, I won't really have a lot to say. I'm just going to spray. I'll just spray it for a minute without the extractor on. But it's
I don't think it's a problem, the extractor, Chris, because your voice was quite clear over the top of it, and it seemed to be auto noise cancelling. So when you weren't saying anything, the noise wasn't there.
Okay, no problem. So I'm going to charge the airbrush up with a little pipette. So the great thing about this particular primer as well is I can spray it straight out of the bottle. I don't need to thin it. I'm just going to check my flow, make sure I'm happy with it, which I am. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a light dusty coat, which helps the remaining paint key to the surface. And I'll start at one end, get down as far as I can, leave it to dry for a few minutes, then I'll turn it around and do the other end. So here we go. So you can see I'm not going overboard, just a very light misty coat. Not right in on top of it. So that's kind of what I mean by a light misty coat. I've not gone crazy with it, not flooded it or anything. And now I'm going to come back in a little bit heavier and start to build up the paint layers. You're better off putting multiple layers on than you are going in and creating like a flood, because when you flood it, it runs. What you can do then as well, you can use the airbrush like a little hairdryer. So I'm just cut to air only there, and as you can see, you can probably see the shininess has disappeared. So the airbrush is blowing the air on and drying the paint.
Pretty quick drying, is it, Chris?
Yeah, it's acrylic, so it dries pretty quick, but even enamels dry pretty quick because you're putting it down so thin. You know, it doesn't take a lot. And what you can see, well, hopefully you can see, is that, you know, when it starts to look a little bit shiny, a little bit wet, then that's a good time to move on. So you don't want to be hanging around too long if it's getting wet. Just see the wet edge. So you can see it's looking quite even. Not seeing any telltale signs of anything that I should be worrying about in terms of surface marks. Little one there. Just put a little bit of paint down on it and see if I can disguise it. So I'm just using the airbrush to dry it off now. I mean, if you really want to go crazy and do things quickly, you can have a hairdryer nearby. A lot of the guys that do sort of commission building, they have a hairdryer, and as soon as they've sprayed it, they'll hairdry it so they can hold it and get on to the next piece. But that's come out quite nicely. That's nice and smooth. You see this.
You tend to do sort of batch spraying, Chris, so you can do one thing, you know, one part, then go on to another. Then by the time you've gone round the lot, the first one's dry, so you can start.
I didn't get that because the fan was on. Say again.
I say, do you tend to try and do batch spraying? So if you've got about 6 or 7 things to do to spray, one
Brilliant.
colour, and then you can just work your way around. And by the time you finish the last one, the first one's ready to be have more coats on it.
Definitely, because, and not only that, you've got to clean the airbrush. So I tend to batch it on. You know, if I'm doing a lot of priming, then I'll get everything prepped. You know, the small parts I don't prime. So if like I'm building an aircraft cockpit and I'm spraying the ejector seat or something like that, I wouldn't bother with the primer. I'd just go straight in with whatever my final color is going to be. But when I've got a big surface like this, and particularly one that could be susceptible to sort of marks, then I would prime it, which is what I'm clearly doing now. So
The airbrush is pretty economical on the paint. You know, how do you judge how much paint you put in the bowl?
experience, to be honest.
Yeah.
And practice. I mean, I've got a little bit left in the cup. I've not got enough in the cup to finish this. But you can, if you haven't, well, even if you have thinned it, it depends what you've thinned it with, but you can put it back in the bottle. So this stuff, if I did have a cup full by the time I'd finish, I'd just pour it back in the bottle. Depending on what you're using for thinners, yeah, you might in some cases, if you've used a thinner that maybe isn't the base of the paint in question. So I use this kind of stuff, Mr. Hobby, which is a lacquer thinner. So I use that with alcohol-based acrylic paints. So it'll thin it beautifully, but I'd never tip that back into the paint pot, into the little bottle, because that's not the base substance of the paint. So, yeah, just practice. I mean, yeah, it's pretty economical. I don't know. I mean, it leaves such a fantastic finish, doesn't it? So I'd never be able to brush paint that accurately. I'm going to put the fan back on just while I finish this.
Yeah.
So I've pretty much finished this, but I've got a tiny little bit left in the paint cup. So rather than pour it out the bottle, put it back in the bottle, I'll just stick a bit more on. Only a tiny bit left.
Isn't that when you are in danger of actually putting too much on?
Not particularly, as long as you're not flooding it. So the technique still remains the same. All I've done is put another layer of paint on. There you can see it's all very, very smooth. I mean, it really is ridiculously flat, which is great. I'm just going to the lid on this. I'm just going to put the fan on just for a couple of minutes, just to help clear some of this fog out. So I've just put some thinner in here, which is Mr. Hobby self-leveling thinner. It's quite aggressive, and I'm just giving it a good swish around with my little paintbrush. Get everything out the colour cup. Tip it in the little waste pot. Shove my finger in with a bit of kitchen roll. Now, I think I've said this before. This is that kitchen roll called Plenty, and the beauty of it, because they do advertise it on the telly, that you can wring it out. It doesn't fall apart when it's wet, so you can get your finger in here and give it a good scrub round when there's no danger that you're going to leave little bits of paper and stuff like that in your airbrush. So I specifically use Plenty for when I'm model making. There's other times I use it as well, which is we'll probably cover at some point if we start talking about weathering, because I do like when you use some of this kind of stuff. This is Flory Models, and it's actually a clay-based wash, and so if you wanting to sort of enhance panel lines and the like, what you can do is you can just paint that all over the model. It's water-based, and then you can just scrub it off with a tissue or a cotton bud. Sort of you re-enliven it when you wet it, and this, again, I use this kind of this tissue paper because it doesn't fall apart. Right, so that's my airbrush cleaned. That's that sprayed. It's time for a cup of coffee. Is that all right with everybody? We just take 10-15 minute break.
Chris, how long can you leave paint in the bowl before, if you in between jobs, you've got another one to do? How long would you recommend? What's the most time you'd leave it between sort of sprays?
I'm not a fan of leaving it too long.
What, 10 minutes? Are we talking?
No, 10 minutes is okay. In its bulk form, it doesn't harden. What you get is the paint will dry as the paint moves around in the colour cup. It starts to coat the wall of the colour cup.
Yeah.
So what you'll see when you've left it 10 minutes or you've gone for a coffee or whatever, you come back, you'll find that the paint is actually dry on the inside of the colour cup around the top where it's kind of washed about. That's okay. You can still continue to spray as long as the the airbrush is performing, you know, it's not spitting and spatting, it's just, you know, it's still very smooth. That's absolutely fine. It's just a little bit harder to clean
Right.
then, because you've got to soften that paint to get it out the color cup. So but this is very aggressive, this lacquer thinner, so it gets most stuff out. If you leave them a very long time, it causes a massive problem. I think I've got one here. I don't know if I've done it. I think I've got two. They're both done now. What happens is where the needle goes into the cone of the airbrush, that'll just jam solid if you leave it to dry.
Yeah.
You know, a few days or something like that.
Mhm.
What you can do as well, if I'm doing a big build, and you know, I'm planning on spending 2 or 3 days, you know, sort of airbrushing, then what I do is I just stick some bog standard airbrush cleaner in the airbrush when I leave it, so it's always moist. Mick, got a question, mate?
Not a question, an observation, Chris. I'd suggest that even after 10 minutes, acrylic paint has already started hardening on the end of the needle and on the inside of the nozzle.
That's a fair point, Mick, to be honest. Yeah, and that would manifest in your paint flow, just being all spitty and spatty when you try and use it. So what you probably noticed is a couple of times I just gave the airbrush a quick spray onto the mat, and that's where I'm just making sure I've cleaned off the end of the nozzle and making sure my flow's okay, because you end up with little globs of dried paint get blown off the end of the needle, and then it spoils your finish. So yeah, it's a good point, Nick. If it's warm, certainly. Yeah, I mean, nothing dries out here. It's like -20 where I'm sitting. So but yeah, you're right. So you do need to be careful with it. I wouldn't leave it too long.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Just picking it, you know.
Yeah, no, it's
Try and
okay.
learn by other people's experiences rather than.
Yeah, what I find really useful with this airbrush is it's got what they call a pinch nozzle on it. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of tapered
Yeah,
on the end.
yeah,
So what you can do, because you do, particularly if it's really warm as well, even when you're spraying, the paint starts to dry on the tip of the nozzle, on the tip of the needle, sorry. Then the paint coming past the end of the needle, it picks up all kinds of bits, and you end up with spats all over the place. So what you can do with this one is you can just grip it like that and just pull, and it cleans the end of the needle, which I particularly like. It's quite useful. Yeah, I mean, I think when I did my session on airbrushing a few months back even, I think it was now, is what I find the easiest thing to do is actually to listen to the noise that the airbrush is making, because if it's doing a nice steady flow and the hiss kind of consistent and it's not going all the time, then you're in a good position that you've got the right air pressure and you get the right paint flow. Yeah. That if you've not got enough air, it's not going to blow it out. If you've got too much air, it's going to blow it out all over the place. And I did a bit of a demonstration. The video's actually online, Paul, of the airbrushing session. Right.
Yeah, I think I did start
worth watching.
I haven't quite got that far yet.
Yeah, and I did a thing on spidering and how spidering happens and all that kind of stuff. So, which is where you're in too close with too much air and thin paint, and it all sprays out all over the place. So, might be worth a look.
I should go back and watch the rest of the video.
Yeah, Paul, I recommend watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I got so far and then I fell asleep.
yeah. Well, I do that even when I'm presenting to myself, so I can understand it.
Well,
Right, I'm going to.
It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, so I haven't got.
I'm going to get a cup of coffee, and then I'm going to have a think about how I'm going to start to weather this. So I was wondering initially I was wanting to make it fairly pristine, but I got some abuse from the audience that that's not the best thing to do. So I've decided I'm going to do a bit of weathering on it, and I'm going to use a technique called hairspray, the hairspray technique. So which enables you to sort of mimic paint flaking off surfaces and the like. So it's very good for things like exhaust pipes and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll have a go at that. It'll be a bit of fun. Anyway, I'll see you in a few.
The, salt one as well, Chris.
We can do salt. Yeah, I mean, it's the where I've used the salt technique. I mean, I did it on this
Sorry,
web.
look, you go and get your coffee, otherwise you'll never talk about it when you come back, otherwise you'll never get that coffee.
Yeah, we can do the salt technique as well. Yeah, that works quite well. But let me go get a drink. I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah. John,
Yeah.
that's all right. I've not forgotten about the Hornby 300 3 rail, but I've discovered I've got some more bits stacked away, so I'm going to sort those out first.
Okay. I sent you a. I did reply, didn't I?
You did, yeah. No, it's me. But
Okay. That's all right. There's no,
no, yeah, there's no rush.
urgency.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Bicester, in
Oh, right.
Oxford.
On the edge of Northampton. So
Oh, right. Well, I could come over.
yeah. Or depending if we get to having these meetings at Wellingborough or something, we could perhaps.
Well, the first one for the East Midlands group is at Wellingborough. I'm trying to think the name of the place, and we're sort of scheduled that. I think I don't know whether Pete's still online. I don't think he is. We scheduled that, I think, for July if everything.
7th of August.
Yeah.
Oh, 7th of August. Sorry. Yeah.
It was originally going to be today, Easter Saturday, but of course, the restrictions aren't yet lifted enough, so we've rescheduled that provisionally for 7th of August for our first face-to-face meeting. Getting back, that all depends on rules, regulations, and what we think is safe. So, and that's at the Kingsway Centre in Wellingborough.
On Monday, are they, about how the lockdowns?
We're getting some announcements on Monday, I think.
Yeah.
I think we take nothing for granted. The media will tell you different things every day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll selectively quote things as well, so you don't get the whole story ever.
Mm. At least we seem to be a world leader in something, in getting people vaccinated. We seem to be well in front of the rest of the world, which is amazing.
It's the one thing our government got right, isn't it? Getting the vaccination program sorted.
Like our world-leading track and trace system.
The only problem we're starting to get with the vaccination is you're getting a lot of people now not turning up because they think they're going to get the AstraZeneca one and they don't want it. So the vaccination
and that's all
starting to stall now
as well, isn't it? So
that's the media winding everyone up. But that's gonna prolong the lockdown if people won't have the vaccine.
Well, at the moment the figures are going in the right direction, so we can stay reasonably positive.
I mean, there were people who were not turning up for their vaccine at Oxford because you don't know what you're going to get till you turn up.
Yeah, when I went for mine, there was plenty of people there, so they were certainly.
Yeah, but a friend of mine works at the hospital in Oxford, and she's saying that they're throwing Pfizer away because it's out of the bottle and they can't keep it.
Oh, that's terrible.
And people aren't turning up for their vaccines because they think they might get the AstraZeneca one.
That's just people being incredibly stupid.
Yeah, but that's being fueled by the media, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But then you see, one minute you hear a story about them throwing it away because no one's turning up, and then you hear another story about another centre where they've got huge queues and they can't cope. So you're not quite sure what to believe. But.
I think maybe there needs to be a bit of an inquiry onto the false and misleading misquoting of the media in Britain when the dust settles. There's been far too much of it. I think
all inquiries do is pay money to a load of people to achieve.
Well, yeah, there is that. But maybe Panorama could do an expose on the BBC for a change.
Which generally doesn't achieve much.
I think, Leslie, I have a level of sympathy with your comment, but I think that it is difficult because you've got a conflict really between freedom of speech, which I would support. I think you have to have freedom of speech, and then this whole misinformation. Who decides? How do you decide what this bit of information is actually wrong? And as Pete was just saying, the media pick up on anything and sort of amplify it far greater than it probably it needs to be amplified. So I think there is a real conflict, and I'd be very loath to lose our freedom of speech and also our freedom to do what we want to do. But you do get quite upset when you see a park completely littered with refuse left for somebody else to clear up. And you just sort of think, well.
The problem is that people don't exercise that freedom of speech with a level of responsibility.
Yeah,
that's true.
Freedom of speech, but no responsibility. And also, I personally think, yeah, it's all right. Keep freedom of speech, but if the newspapers are going to publish these articles, they've got to have proof, incontrovertible proof behind what they're saying before they can publish it, rather than just publishing rumours. They need to be able to, back up what they're putting out in the media, because people are taking note of them. So they need to be able to, justify what they're saying is right. They can't just, quote someone. They need, backup evidence behind it to prove it.
I mean, the trouble is, a lot of us we're not experts, are we? So we don't really know. Whereas looking at Chris spraying his stuff, we're all experts at that, so we can see when he's doing it wrong. So we have.
Which is most of the time, John, I might add.
But what gets me is people will listen, take as gospel these cranks that come on saying that, like the MMR jab, which was a scare about people getting autism from it a few years ago, and they'll listen to these people, and yet then you get people like Chris Whitty, you know, who's professor of this, you know, strings, and all these, you know, well-qualified people, and yet they'll prefer to listen to the experts rather than the experts. What do you do? You know?
Chris, before you start making a mess of your tube, just a question occurred to me. You've got, at the moment, you haven't got those tanks on a stanchion.
On the
face.
On the stand, I haven't. You're right.
So is that not going to be difficult to be sure that you've got the weathering in the right place if you don't know which way round the tank is?
Yeah, you could argue that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'll probably do.
I mean, one of the tanks do have a thing on the bottom of the one end, and also doesn't have a hole in the top somewhere.
No, there's no holes in the top.
Oh, just that.
There'll be a piece.
Put that bit on, dude, don't you? So you could perhaps do that. Put the bit up, the tank filler bit on.
Yeah, well, I can see where the bottom is, but you're right. I mean, and I've been considering this because, you know, you've got the added challenge as well that when you stick the legs on, you're sticking it on with a solvent, and the solvent likes to eat the paint. So you have to consider how you're going to manage that.
Will the solvent eat? You've got acrylic paint on there, haven't you?
Yeah, you'll melt that as well if you put loads on.
Didn't know that.
So you need to be when you're applying the solvent to something that's painted, you have to be very. You don't want to be scrubbing anything, right? So you just tap and let the capillary action run the paint round, run the solvent round, and it leaves very little to no marks at all. If you were to put the brush on and then brush it, you'd bring all the paint up with it.
I mean, I know for the purposes of this demonstration, you've got it planned as you are doing it, but of course the other issue is with what you've just said, having weathered the tank, then putting the base on, that's going because the weathering would be be affected by the position of the stand, wouldn't it? I mean, it wouldn't. You see what I mean? It wouldn't disappear under the stand. It would go round it.
Yeah.
Sorry?
So this is only part of the weathering process that the model is going to go through. So, I mean, we're fortunate that we've got Mick on because he'll be able to keep me honest and probably give me some tips as well. But what I'm looking to do with this particular tank is I'm going to use the hairspray technique, and I'll explain when I've checked in a minute that everybody's back. I'll explain what that is, and that's only the start of it, right? So I can then move on and do other things to it, and then maybe the some of the final applications of weathering I won't do until the model's complete. So I'll build it up in layers. If you've heard me talking about this on, it's all needs to be done in layers, and it needs to be done. You don't go crazy with it. You know, it's just depends on the effect that you want, but you can always add. It's a lot harder to take it away sometimes. And one of the things I wanted to do as well is I wanted to put some decals on the tank. So I've got to think about that and how I might want to do that.
But yeah, in fact, I was just going to say that to you. Surely you would need to finish the tanks in the colour they're going to be.
Yeah.
Before you do the weathering.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to cover that.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's all right. No,
Michael.
No, I can show you. I can show you. I mean, this thing stand at the moment. I don't think I'll have time to put a top coat on today.
No.
So, but I can talk about the technique, and then I'll probably quickly demonstrate it next week. The interesting bit is when you, as you develop the weathering effect with the hairspray technique. Just looking to see if I've got everybody on. Buzzing again, John. That's it. So I've got a few guys that are away from the office by the look of it. Just wait a few minutes. And my wife's done some baking. Look.
Oh, very nice.
So I've just gone in the house to get a coffee, and she's done some baking. So I've left quickly.
Oh,
I was wondering what part of the model they were.
Yeah. Well,
you're living dangerously, Chris.
yeah. Well, our daughter's coming over tomorrow, so I should imagine she's done them in a bit of preparation for that. But anyway, I'll deny all knowledge and blame the dog.
There should be hot cross buns.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to complain, John.
Well, some of us have to make our own, of course.
Hey, I did some baking last weekend. I made some shortbread. Yeah, came out all right, actually. Came out so well, Tracy ate nearly all of it.
Peter, while Chris is just eating his pie, or whatever it is, just to tell you that shot key shortcut that you mentioned works.
Good.
I've just completed that. There is still a difficulty because the half farad capacitor starts losing its power quite quickly. So if you've got your first interruption, there's no flicker. The second interruption, you get the effect because the capacitor hasn't had time to recharge to its full maximum.
You might be better with a smaller capacitor then.
Well, you know, there's that.
Half a farad may be overkill just for stopping flicker on coach.
Yeah, you might be right, actually. Might be worth experimenting with.
But also, I mean, keeper lives are intended to, you know, help if you do lose contact occasionally. They're not meant as a replacement for decent pickups.
Well, that's fair comment. Yeah. But it's difficult fitting loads of contacts onto some coaches. So
yeah, I mean, what about those spring type that are over? You know, DCC Concepts sell them, or you can make your own. Like a little wound spring that goes over the axle, so there's almost zero resistance, as it were, rolling resistance. Rolling resistance introduced by them.
Yeah, but you still got to take the bogie apart and take the wheels apart.
Oh yeah, you still got to. Well, yeah, but then
you know what we really want is a wireless thing that sticks on the back of the wheel and wirelessly transmits the power.
Ultimately, yeah, if you want coach lighting, you've got to deal with the pickups. There's no way.
Yeah, well, that's true enough. But I think it will work enough. So
yeah,
now that we've put that mod in, so
yeah,
thanks for that.
Okay.
That was a good idea.
Good.
I've just realised I'm going to have to go wash my hands before I touch this model.
Yeah, probably. Am I still buzzing?
Yeah.
Chris, what? Back to the laser cutting. What package do you use to design? You know, your designs. You know, is it Inkscape? Or?
I use a number of packages. Inkscape, yes, I've used Inkscape. And do use Inkscape. I use the software that I use to drive the laser with is called Lightburn.
Right.
Because you need something, once you've got the image, you need to turn it into something that the laser can understand. What Lightburn does is it interfaces to the controller on the laser. So you can set all the power, you can set the speed the laser's moving, because that's another couple of the variables. You can adjust the power that the laser fires at.
Yeah.
But you can also adjust the speed that the laser head is traveling.
Yeah.
So they're both quite relevant. For me, a lot of people think that, you know, your laser can deliver 100% power, which it potentially can, but if you look at a curve of the laser power at 100%, you're probably only getting 60-70% of the capability of the laser. And then the harder you drive the laser, the more current you push into the laser, the less it lives.
Yeah.
What I do is I tend to go with sort of drive the laser very lightly. 25% for card is probably as high as I'd go at the minute. I'm finding that it is getting tired, so I'm finding I'm having to lift the power quite a bit now. But then I bring the speed right down if I have to, so that it's got more chance to burn whatever it is that it's burning.
Mm. Or do you do, you know, repeat passes at a lower power?
I've never done that.
All right.
That's an option. That's an option. But I've no need to do that. Now, if you had a relatively low powered laser, 20, 30 watts, maybe, might be some materials you'd need to do a double or triple pass on.
Mm. I was thinking in terms of, well, especially if you're using it on thicker material, because, you know, you've only got, because it's not really a cone, it's more of an X, isn't it, coming out the lane?
Yeah.
So you're better off going down in little cuts through thick stuff rather than trying to do a big cut. Otherwise, you're going to get a big undercut where the laser goes through the bottom of the material.
I mean, you could, and you can get lenses with different configurations. So you get a narrower cone, so it's not quite so noticeable. Don't forget, even at the point, it's something like getting on for 1,000th of a millimeter.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but isn't it a fiddling job changing the cones over?
no, the lens sits in like a little tube, and it's got a thread on end. And then the tube sits into a housing that just sort of clamps in. So no, it's not a long job. I mean, I've only got one lens, but again, it's another one of those things where when you buy the machine, you no idea what you're doing. And I've kind of got a lens that's got I think something like 1.5 inch focal length. So it's kind of Mr. Average, but the quality of the lens that you use and the quality of the mirrors that you use, all of those affect the capability of the laser.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables.
No, I'm just thinking if you're changing, you know,
I'm going to order a new,
for want of a better word, you know, you're going to adjust. You're not going to get it exactly back as the one previously, so that can then affect.
Oh no, you can. It goes up the nozzle. The tube that holds the lens goes up against, like a spigot, goes up against a face.
Oh, right. So it's
all the way in, job done. Yeah.
That's a constant.
And the focal length never changes, even if you didn't put the tube in all the way, because the lens is fixed within the casing. So that means the lens is always the same distance away from the end of the nozzle. Doesn't matter whether you put it in all the way or not. Doesn't make any difference, because you measure the distance between the end of the nozzle and the workpiece. So the focal length of the lens is still the same, because when the laser beam hits the lens, it's in a parallel beam. So it comes out the laser parallel down the side mirror, cross onto the carriage, and it's parallel, and it's even parallel when it turns round and goes down into the nozzle. As soon as it hits the nozzle, the lens, that's when it brings it to a fine point.
Right.
So when I put my finger in front of it, it wasn't under the cutting bit, because you'd be stupid to put your finger under there, but I was holding something to doing a test, you have a pulse test. So I pressed pulse and the laser fired, but I had my hand in the way of the laser beam as it comes across the carriage, and it hit the end of my finger and burnt a little circle on my finger, you know, probably 3 or 4 mil across. I said, ouch, that hurt quite a bit.
Or something.
Or something similar, yeah. So I'm just going to go wash my hands, because I've just eaten a cake, or 2 in fact, and my hands will be greasy, and that's the last thing you want on your model, is any kind of buttery fingerprints. I'll be back in a mo.
Peter, while Chris is away from the screen, can I ask you, we put into PNB JVG on Dropbox the build instructions for the various CAN modules, and I think I used the CAN Myo one as my template. Did you?
I mean, if you've got current build instructions, you're better off just pulling them straight off the knowledge base, because I don't know how long.
No. I'm using that as a template. So I'm just asking you if there's which it would be the best one to use for the future. I think I've been using the Cameo. Is that the
When you say use it for the future, what do you mean exactly?
as a template for the building instructions?
Oh, for writing new ones. Yeah, I'd use that one. Yeah.
Yeah, you think there's nothing better than that
No,
that
probably
we've
not.
done? No, okay.
Right then. Everybody's back with us, those that want to be anyway. So I'm just going to move this over. Right. So what we're planning on doing here is we're going to use a technique called the hairspray technique for modeling. And the way that works is hairspray is effectively a water-based adhesive, and so you can wash it out your hair, of course. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a surface down, which is going to be the surface. We're going to put a colour down, which is the colour that we want to see ultimately of the rust and all the muck and everything that's going to appear through our top coat. So we're going to build this up in a series of layers. So the first thing we need to do is we need to coat this cylinder so that it looks completely rusty or just red and brown all over. Because that's what we want to show through the top coat when we start the hairspray technique. So the first thing we need to do is we need to spray it rust color. So what you could do, which would be it'd probably look a bit boring, but there's all these different paints you can get that are different colors of rust. So, and as you'll know, if you go and look at anything that's rusty, you'll notice that it's not one uniform color. It varies quite a bit. So what you do, or what I do anyway, is I'll spray this cylinder with, I'll probably put a base coat of dark rust on it first. And then I'll start messing around just randomly with other bits of rust. So some shadow rust, some light rust, medium rust, old rust. And I'll create like a patchwork effect on the cylinder of all different colors, right? All over it. So that gives us the color that ultimately we want to show through what's going to be our top surface. And then so where does the hairspray come in? So once that's dry and you've painted it all your different rusty colors, and you could actually brush some of this on as well, because that just makes it a bit thicker, gives it a bit of texture. Then what we do is we spray the whole thing with hairspray. Okay, so from the pound shop, nothing too elaborate. It doesn't need to be is he or isn't he type hairspray, just the cheapest hairspray you can possibly get. I actually decant the hairspray out the can, and then I airbrush it on, and I airbrush several thin layers of hairspray onto the surface of the rust. Right. Then what I'll do is I'll take my chosen top color, and I haven't really decided, but I'm thinking that a grey might be quite good. And this needs to be an acrylic paint, by the way. Don't try this with enamels; it won't work. So I might go for something like this dark sea grey as my top surface. So I've painted all my rust on, so it's orange and red and brown. Then I put my hairspray on, so I look really nice, and it's got hairspray on it. And then I'll finish off with painting it with my top coat. Okay. Now when I've done that's I'm ready to start teasing out the rust. I want the rust to start to come through, and you'll notice if you go and look at the prototype, rust tends to appear in little spots and scratches and various other bits and pieces. And this is where this technique works really, really well, because you'll see paint peeling off, and then you'll see the rust appearing underneath where the paint's peeled off. So what you're able to do is, having painted your top coat with acrylic, you can then start to attack the surface of the model with paint brushes dipped in water. And as you rub the paintbrush across the surface of the acrylic paint, it starts to wear away, and the water hits the hairspray and dissolves the hairspray because it's water soluble, and the paint top layer starts to peel off. It sounds kind of bizarre, but it does start to peel off. And you can rub it with cocktail sticks. You can rub it with sort of little wooden bamboo sticks like this. You don't go crazy, because if you go crazy, you'll end up at the plastic. But very gently, and once you break the surface, and the water capillary action goes into the hairspray, that you can then it just peels the paint off. So you would continue that technique all over it to whatever extent you wanted to make it, if a couple of spots maybe, or you really want to make it ragged, and then you leave it to dry. And then what you'd end up with is you'd end up with a grey cylinder with bits of paint peeling off all over the place, and then your rust starting to show through. So that's kind of where we're trying to get to. Mick?
We are working in 4mm scale here, Chris.
Yeah.
Forgive me for sticking my oar in, but
No, I want you to.
I think the representation of texture in 4mm scale can easily be overdone. It's something like 7mm scale. It's fine. O gauge. That's fine.
Yeah.
If you try too hard to represent texture in 4mm scale, it can look overdone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
I've got
I'm
a
looking
wagon here, I think. I'm listening, go on.
I'm also looking at the selection of colours you've got there.
Yeah.
And I, if it was me doing it, I would not use those two centre ones.
These?
Because they would be far too bright in 4mm scale.
I would use them either. Yeah, they're too bright, aren't they?
Yeah, I keep saying this because weathering is a very personal thing. But I would use those two bright colours because I think in 4mm scale they would stand out far too much.
Be too orange.
Yeah.
This particular one, I mean, it's just too much. But you're right. But I just got this out by way of an example. So I personally, I would go with this dark rust, which is kind of a reddy coloured colour, and then I'd go with this one as well, which is the old rust, to sort of keep it fairly low key, because like you say, they're really bright. But they come in a kit, so you get the whole lot. I bought them all as a package.
So presumably as you go, Chris, you'd be mixing the new colour in the mixing bowl on your airbrush, so you're getting that constant variation. Is that how you would do it? Yeah,
you could do. I mean, what you're looking for is randomness, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's not. I mean, there's certain things that make items weather in a certain way. The sort of straight lines you get on surfaces created by the rain tends not to be sidewards. Could be, I suppose, if you're on a high-speed train looking after it's just been raining. But Nick's saying no, I don't know. But it tends to, if I'm putting any weathering on, like I'm weathering a tank at the minute, everything is downwards. So the kind of the muck that's coming down is downwards. So you want to be random. Nothing rusts evenly in terms of colour.
And it's really good to actually. Obviously, there isn't time today, but at some future session, it'd be great to see you do that process that you've just described.
I'm going to do it, but I won't get it done today, I don't think.
No.
But I've got 2 tanks to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you can practice before you do it in front of us, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I'll do one, and if I'm happy with it, then I'll show you how I did it. Let me just grab that wagon, because I thought it was there.
It's an interesting thing that, and obviously this is mainly about doing our own weathering and so on. In the model railway world, where people commission things to be done sometimes, it's very unusual that the same person does the weathering as does the fight. Usually someone will send their new shiny loco off to be painted by one person, then send it to somebody else to be weathered, and of course that precludes a process where you're putting the weathering under the final coat. So it's interesting that
it does. This is one of many techniques, and Yeah, I guess I'm kind of showing it because it's not a technique that's a little person, by the way, in the back of the wagon, if you wondered what that was. It's not a technique that you would not commonly see, I don't think, in model railway.
No, it makes it very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I thought, in fact, I did actually when I did the soul. I think these are called soul bars, aren't they? These things along here.
Yeah.
And all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was weathering that, I remember because Bill was with me and Tim, and I did a little bit of hairspray weathering on that, but I've ultimately ended up covering it up with track dirt, and so it would, yeah. I thought I could show you something a bit better on there. I've done a bit of salt weathering on this one, and I've also done a bit of you can randomly weather. I think you covered this the other day, Mick, with this kind of stuff, like a mascol type of material. So you can get a little sponge and dab the mascol on top of the rust, and then spray your top coat on. And then when it's dry, you just rub it with your fingers, and the mascol comes off, and it reveals the little spots of rust and the like sort of coming through. So I think that's what I did, sort of just here. I think probably some of this is a little bit bright. I don't know what it comes like out on camera, but to the light, it looks kind of all right. Yeah, well, that was we had a bit of a day, Tim, me and Bill, trying every single technique that I knew of on one wagon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a relatively dark, where is it? Not shadow rust, I didn't want. Dark rust, here we go. Give it a good, again, need to give these things a damn good shake. Just going to whack a bit of airbrush cleaner through the airbrush, make sure it's happy. All good. Now I'm going to try and spray this straight out the pot. Don't know what it will behave like. I can't remember how thin this stuff is. Yeah, in fact, I probably will just stick a little bit of so to save any challenges, this is Vallejo paint. So I'm just, well, it's MIG, but same kind of stuff. Just going to stick a little bit of thinner in. Now, certain people will tell you never, never, ever mix the paint in the paint cup. I always put the thinner in first, and then I put the paint in. Never have a problem. Put the paint in first, and then the thinner, you'll get a problem because the thick paint then runs down to the bottom of the airbrush to the needle, blocks everything up. Whereas because I put the thinner in first, the first thing that's going to come out of here is thinner. Check my flow. That looks very nice. I can leave the extractor off because this is nowhere near as pungent. So I'm going to blanket this all over, and again, as Mick says, you can see it's quite bright, quite orange. So if I don't like it, I can tone it down with the darker ones. So same technique, start with a light misty coat. That's coming a little bit heavier. I'm going to make sure I get a nice even coat of this particular rust on, just so that, you know, I'm not going to have a point where I suddenly start lifting the top coat off and I find that there's grey underneath. And then I'll come in with the other colours in a minute and mess it up a bit. I just leave it orange, looks all right. Anybody got any thoughts where I can get some BP or Shell decals from? Would it be somewhere like Fox Transfers?
You see, putting that on as a very nice, even, pretty coat rather than a sort of messy, rusty coat.
Yeah, because at the moment I want to make sure that I've got a nice even coat before I mess it up so that the grey doesn't show through. So what I'm going to do next is, when it's dry, because it's not drying as quick as the, this is where I'd use the hairdryer normally. It's not drying as quick as the other paint this morning. Yeah, now what I'll do is I'll start, when I've got an even coat all over, then I'll go and start splodging stuff all over randomly. But I just wanted a base coat of rust. It's quite cold in here. Different solvent as well, you see, that's those paint this morning. Use the airbrush as a little hairdryer. I've actually got a mark in there. I don't know if you can see that. Now that I've painted it, if I can, there's a tiny, tiny little mark just here. I mean, I'm not going to worry about it, but just there's a tiny mark. Now I don't know whether I've caught the surface with something. It's got like a little scratch in it. So, you know, I was saying previously that when you start putting your paint on, that's when it shows all the little sins. There's no sign of any of the seams, which is great, but there's just a little mark there. But again, I'm not going to worry about that. I shall certainly be looking, if that comes through on the top coat, I shall be looking to lift that piece of paint off. I think what I might do is I might stand that one there for a minute and do the other one. Roger that.
Chris, can I make another observation, please?
You can.
I am a little concerned about your use of paint without the spray booth
Yes. Yeah.
going,
I mean,
and also about your use of the spray booth without the shroud in place.
yeah. I mean, it's not ideal. Normally, I would be a bit closer to it, but it's quite effective. I don't, when I've got it on, it seems to work quite well.
Yeah, seems to, but you did imply earlier that it's okay to use acrylics without extraction.
Oh, no, I did. I don't think I did, Nick.
You said you weren't going to turn the fan on.
Yes, I did say that, but that I'm not for 1 minute implying that you shouldn't have extraction, because you absolutely should.
Yeah, well,
You absolutely should.
Yeah, okay. I accept that in these circumstances, it's probably not practical. But I think pointing out to people that whenever you use an airbrush, you must make sure that nothing goes up your nose apart from fresh air.
Yeah. Save your nose for the Coke.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'd have it on all the time, but as you say, in these circumstances, it's a little bit harder because you can't hear anything.
I found I could hear you fine with the extraction on, Chris. I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, I can't hear you though. That's the problem.
You need a headset.
Yeah. And I have one here, but it's not working this morning. I don't know why. Otherwise, I'd put it on. In fact, let me try it again. See if it's had a change of thought, and then I can put the air booth on, then spray booth on. It's not happy.
Blame it on a Microsoft update.
Yeah, we'll blame everything on that, don't we? So I might as well fill my boots. It's just my Bluetooth's on, so it's very strange. Just bear with me. No, it's having none of it. Sorry about that. It did work fine. I just tried repairing it and it wasn't having any of that either. So I'll put it on, and then I'll if there's any questions, I'll take them afterwards.
Sounds good to me, Chris.
Cool. Right, so I'm just going to coat the other end of this. Light misty coat to start with. Got a bit of a mark there. Can you see that? Just in the top. Just here. Bit annoying. Where is it?
I
It's
suppose,
actually in the bottom.
it's a balance, isn't it, Chris? Because we're trying to make something that looks battered and beaten. So do we worry about every tiny little mark, I suppose?
No, it's just me being anal. It's at the bottom, Pete, so you'll have to get underneath it to see it. That isn't going to happen. But don't think, I mean, these techniques...
The other thing is from the normal...
Just 1 second, let me just switch the fan off. I'm not spraying now, so I'm just drying. Sorry, what was that?
I was going to say, from the normal viewing distance, you wouldn't probably see it anyway.
You probably wouldn't. No, it's just, you know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So it can be a nice habit and an annoying habit too.
Yeah.
No, Chris, there's no harm in it showing us the perfectionist aspects. It's up to us to choose what level of consistent finish we have on our models. That'll depend to some extent on our skill. I'm not expecting to achieve the level that you have because I don't have time to do the practice.
Yeah. I mean, it is, and that's the beauty of this hobby, isn't it? That it's horses for courses. I mean, I've done a little bit of competition modelling, and you know, it's crazy because they pick up on that straight away, that kind of thing. So that's probably why I'm a little bit more anal than I need to be. But anyway, so we've got a nice, fairly even coat of dark rust on there. So I'm just going to go in with a bit of, what do we fancy? A bit of old rust. Some of these paint pots have a little ball bearing in, which is always good. It's a bit worrying when you've been shaking this other one for God knows how long and you still couldn't hear the bearing. Just help to stir the muck up a little bit.
Is that something you would suggest adding to your cans of paint? Put a little.
Some people do. You know, you need marine grade, little marine grade nuts and bolts, little marine grade nut people use.
You can actually get glass ones.
Can you?
Yeah, glass ball bearings.
I've never.
Specifically for putting in small paint pots.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I've never bothered. You give it a good shake for long enough and have a look on the bottom. You can see whether you've got most of the pigment mixed up.
Where do you get those glass ball bearings from?
eBay.
Are they just called glass ball bearings?
I believe so. That's what I know.
Because presumably you could put those into pots of enamel paint as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a bag of glass ball bearings.
I can only see a poly bag. I can't see.
Yeah, there's
Because the glass,
empty paint pots online, various sizes.
Sorry, somebody said. What did somebody say?
You can find various paint pots
Oh, paint
online, and you know, just different sizes.
What? So you can your
just put in on eBay paint dropper bottles, ball bearings.
Okay, thank you, Harry.
So what I've done here is I've just put the dark rust paint in on top of what was in the, or the shadow rust on top of whatever was in there, because you know we're not looking for perfection here. Now you'll see this is quite a different colour. So I'm just going to put some random splodges on. Any tips for this bit, Mick? Or just go random? Is he still here, Mick? Don't know if he's gone or not.
Gone.
Is he right? So I'm just randomly sticking some of this on. I mean, one of the things to remember with all of this stuff, and I think you were alluding to it then, Les, is that with any of this, beauty's in the eye of the beholder anyway. So, you know, you could weather this and think to you it's absolutely beautiful, and somebody else, it might not be their taste. And so I try not to be prescriptive as to how one approaches the subject.
I think to pick up on something that Jim Smith Wright says is that the best thing to do is to model what you see.
Yeah,
He uses photographs and he goes out places and looks at stuff, but by modeling what you see, you're not modeling what's in your head and what you think it should be. You're modeling what you can see. Of course, it doesn't mean that if you've got an eye problem, you don't see something different, but we're in with a better chance of getting it right. I've tried to do that, but not very successfully over the years. Main problem is time.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges as well is that we see it, but then actually recreating what we see is harder than recreating what we think. So you know, when you and that's when the techniques really come into the equation. So it's like if you look at an aircraft that's been operating from an aircraft carrier, the hammer that it gets on the paint, you know, if you want to do it as you see, you need a technique that's going to make the paint bleach in the same way as it bleaches when it's been out in the sun and the salt. So it can be a lot harder to do what you see, because, and that's why I tend to do things like this just randomly, because I know that in nature it would be random too.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair enough, Chris. It's just an observation that about how do we individually develop our own styles of doing stuff. I've done a bit of watercoloring and acrylic painting over the years, and I was never that good at it. Every now and again, I get it right, and you think, "Ah, no, that's nice," and you think, "Ah, that's great." But try to do it again the next day or a day after, and that's not quite so easy.
That's it. Yeah, one of life's happy accidents.
The other factor to throw in is what you see in real life, and then you're trying to reduce it in, down to 1/76 scale.
Yeah, scale effect.
Yeah, scale effect.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, Paul. And to some extent, it's a bit like the old adage about airplanes. If it looks right, it is right.
Yeah.
But to you, but then again, it's your model, your train set, and we all do it our own way, and to as much as we had. I think it was Rice who said that model with consistency. If you do a beautiful fine scale detailed rail engine model and have medium scale scenery, both look wrong.
Yeah.
Well, David Jenkinson says the same thing as well. It's got to be consistent across the range.
Yeah,
Can I throw one heretical?
Sorry, Paul. I think that's the difficult bit, is to decide just how far you can go and how far you need to go.
And also it depends on your skills. You might be an excellent, engine, building engines, but you just can't figure out signaling and things like that. So it's a difficult one.
Horses for
you can have
courses.
a passion for, One heretical view I've got is: do we need all these different shades of paints, especially rust? You buy all these millions of, dark earth, light earth, like you've got, Chris, dark rust, light rust, old rust.
Yeah.
Can we not just have one base colour and then just add other bits, like a bit of grey or a bit of green?
If you wanted to, yeah. It's just convenient.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do me for that one. So I've got quite a patchy kind of look on it. I mean, it'll look, when I spray it grey and I start scratching the surface off, it'll look rusty.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. What I'm going to do with this one is, because I've put a darker paint in my airbrush, I'm going to base this one on dark and then top it with some light. Save me having to mess about with changing the paint. Didn't realise the time. It's gone 12. for that, I think. You can see there that I've overdone the paint. Can you see it running? Just there, can you see that
Yeah.
getting in it? So I'm just going to actually put more paint on it and just gently let the solvent soften it and then dry it back.
Right. Chris, one question on the chat about what paints are they and are they acrylic? Make of the paint.
These are MK and they're acrylics.
Right.
All the paints I've used today are acrylic. I've made a mess of this.
Back to sanding.
I was trying to do it too quickly. Probably got away with it.
If not, Chris, there's no harm in using that as an example of how to put it right next time.
Yeah, well, I'll do. There's one or two things. I mean, I've softened the paint by applying some more effectively thinner to it, which is one of the techniques that you do when you're glossing. You just thin back, thin back, thin back, and thin back until you're almost spraying just the thinner. But it'll probably settle down enough for that now. But I'm not going to blow on it anymore because the blowing on it will make the paint move. So I'll have to give it a minute.
Well, no, that helps us lesson mortals because then it shows us how to overcome our mistakes, you see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what I was saying about going steady, and I was going a little bit heavy on the paint. So and that's what happens. But I think I've got away with it. That's a nice effect there. You can see where the two colours are blending together, and you know that's the kind of thing you get with rust, isn't it? You get like this light and dark kind of patches. But this is dry now, so again, be interesting to see what it looks like when we chip it. You'll hear the hairspray technique being referred to as the chipping technique as well, and you can buy chipping fluid in a bottle and you can pay a fortune for it. It's only hairspray. So you can tell I've overdone it because of the length of time it's taking to dry. Look, it's still shiny. Got a bit overexcited. Yeah, I've done it again there as well. Anyway, what you can do with something like that is you don't have to go crazy sanding it. You can just use a buffer like a polisher or some really fine something like these things. These are called flexiglass, and they go up to 6,000 grit. So just give it a swipe with something like that, and it'll just take the mark out. A bit of air on it now. See if it can. Probably got away with that, to be honest. Right, let's stick a bit more of this dark rust in. Vinny's in first. Oh, some paint in the colour cup. Yeah, the colour's changing as the paint pulls through. So on the mat here, this area here was when I first sprayed it, and this area here is where I'm spraying it now, as the dark colour was down the bottom of the nozzle. I've got a more orangey colour now, which I'm going to go over some of this dark with. Few splodges here and there. Will do. Going to try a bit of this one. See what it looks like. This is even darker. Ooh. Not any darker, it's open. I've got it all over the ceiling, so that's promising. These little dropper bottles are quite useful and make it really easy getting the paint in the colour cup. Right, let's give this a bit of a another technique that aircraft modelers use when they're weathering is they do really small figure of eights with the paint, like this. Do it in a dark colour, and then what happens is you put the lighter colour over the top, it shows up as it's kind of just like random dirt patterns. So it's probably not appropriate for this, but you have to get in very close if you're doing that kind of stuff. Takes a little bit of practice. So that should be random enough to give a rust effect when we take the lighter paint off the top of it. That'll do me, I think, for that. So I'll leave that to dry and let it dry well, and then I'll put the hairspray on it and leave that to dry, and then I'll go over it evenly with a nice top coat of whatever it is I've decided to top coat it with, which I'll probably use that grey, dark sea grey or whatever it is. Need to try and get some decals. Does anybody have any thoughts where I can get some decals from?
There was a link on chat.
Oh, was there? Okay. Thank you for whoever put that on then.
That was Nigel.
Oh, was it? Thanks, Nigel. I don't know who's still here. I can only see 5 people in my
Yeah,
my
there's
gallery.
quite a few. There's quite a few places, Chris, if you look for it.
Is there? Right. Thank you. Suppose we have to get some of them. Then we can do a piece on decaling, can't we?
Yeah. Plus, also,
Hey.
if it's modern image, you'll be wanting sort of more modern companies as well.
Yeah, I was going to go with BP or SO, something like that. Would that
Yeah.
be appropriate?
Yeah, modern image, it wouldn't be directly BP or SO. It would be some other company that's bought it from BP or SO, because they don't tend to do the actual delivery themselves anymore.
Oh, right. Okay. I wouldn't know what to put then.
Look in the yellow pages.
What? I've heard of that.
That's a rarity. You don't get. In
Yeah.
fact, they've stopped producing them now, haven't they?
Yeah, I think so.
No, it is still out there, but it's very thin these
Thin,
days.
yeah. Well, it used to be a
You
big,
know,
great wadge when it used years ago, before the
Yeah,
internet.
It's this thing called Google that's
Yeah.
done them in.
yeah. Do you remember there was a program on? It was something like The World's Strongest Man or something like that, or Superstars or Super Sports or something.
Where they're tearing the
Yeah, tearing the direction.
Yeah.
There was a guy I worked with. He's a complete nutter. It was on RAF Coningsby years and years ago, and he used to like, you know, showing off by saying, yeah, I can rip telephone directories off. And whenever you needed a telephone directory, you couldn't bloody find one. You could only find half of one because he ripped them all up. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Bit of muck in there. I'll give this a bit of a rinse out now, and then I'll take the needle out and give that a good, give it a bit of a wipe. That looks pretty good.
Right, Chris, I'm going to disappear now because I've got to go and make my lunch.
All right, John.
Unlike other people. We're chatting later today, are we still?
That's the plan. Yeah.
What sort of time? What sort of time do you think?
Well, I'm thinking if the dog goes to sleep, which is about 3 o'clock, then it'll be probably between 3 and 4.
Okay, I'll give you a bell at 3. See how you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Are you? Are we talking about the stockholder?
Yes. I wonder what
Yeah.
you meant for a minute. Stock play, yeah.
Yeah. Is it worth me cutting one yet or not then?
No, because I need to give you some sizes changes.
Okay. No problem then.
They're sort of minor, well, ish. It will require work on the CAD, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do the CAD then, and then yeah, then we can have a go cutting it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll speak to you in a bit, John.
All right, I'll speak to you in a bit. Toodaloo, everybody.
Cheers, John.
Cheers, John.
Cheers, John.
Coming back to your question about the caddy, Nigel.
Yeah.
there may be areas where you might need to just sand a little bit. They're very tight.
Yeah, I've already discovered a bit that's very tight, so I might need to order some spare parts off you in a week.
Oh, right. Okay. Is that the bit that has all the cutouts in it? It's about
This bit.
Yes, you have to be careful with that. It's quite delicate.
Yeah, I've realised that now.
I'll cut you another one. Don't worry.
Yeah, maybe a couple.
The trick with that is to put the pressure on it. Right, put your fingers in the holes in it.
Yeah.
And put the pressure on, against the because that goes into like a mid plate or a back plate.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I realised that immediately after that broke.
You bust it. What part is it? It's got a label on, hasn't it?
It's part A. So it's the first bit I needed to assemble.
Yes, yeah. I think Chris Langdon had the same problem.
Oh, right, okay. It's not just me being ham-fisted then.
No, I think it's always a balance with these things, because I did make it very tight, but it makes a fantastic joint when you...
when it is assembled, yeah.
Yeah. And if you leg it loose, then it just looks a bit sloppy. So, right, that's all good.
You always strip down and clean your airbrush after every session, Chris?
Yeah, I just take the needle out and give it a wipe. It's had a good run through with airbrush cleaner, and then yeah, I took the needle out, wiped that off, and then I've just run some more airbrush cleaner through it too. So it should be good. I'll drop a couple of drips of airbrush cleaner into it as well, so it can just sit there. It should be all right. Should be all right. But I'm gonna have a go at. What time is it? I might stick some hairspray on one of these cylinders. No, I won't. I'll leave it to dry. I'll leave it to dry. That's going to be the best course of action. You want that lower surface to be well cured before you attack it with any water. If you go in too early, then you can just go through the whole lot, and then the grey will show from the primer. The primer isn't acrylic, so it won't lift off, but the top coat will when the water goes under it through the under the hairspray. Shake this this medium rust up to see what colour it actually looks like, because it looks bright yellow, but I'm sure as I start to shake it, it won't be.
Just a quick check of understanding, Chris. You were saying that the primer is not acrylic.
This is not acrylic, no. This is I think it's either an enamel or a lacquer. I think it's an enamel-based primer, this one. It's made by AK Interactive. So, see, quite rightly, as they all say, very important to clean it with the extreme cleaner because of its finest components. So they sell the cleaner as well.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, so it's not alcohol based. I think, yeah, I think it's going to be either an enamel or a lacquer based primer. But it does give you such a nice finish. It's not super smooth, but it's a primer, so it gives you a nice surface to put you. I mean, this now is absolutely kind of glossy smooth. It really is, and I've got a little run in there, but that's okay. We can soon disguise that. So yeah, what I'd do then is I'd spray it with hairspray, let the hairspray dry, then I'll spray the top coat, which I'm probably going to go with dark sea grey. Do they look grey, some of these on the prototype? These little these fuel depots, is that an appropriate colour, or do I need something else?
It depends. I mean, a lot of the tanks we used to have at work were matte black,
Right.
but then some of the ones sort of in more recent times are all sorts of different colours, but they all generally tend to be matte. Although whether that's color the paint they use, or whether it's the weathering effect, being out in the rain all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, some of them are often green. You know, green colour.
Right.
And
Yeah. I've seen them
entirely
white.
up. I think it's a matter of what you fancy, Chris.
Yeah, I'm going with this grey. Or maybe a lot slightly lighter one. What's this one? Dark sea grey. I've got a medium. I know, there we go. Medium sea grey. There we go. That's a compromise. I'll do them with that. So any other questions? I think I'm going to call it a day in a minute, guys.
How next session? How long are these techniques going to take, Chris, to show? I just wonder whether if you prep one, so you're ready.
Yeah, one will be done. One will be done.
Peeling, doing your spider effect, and then the other one you sort of start from the basics and build up your layers as you go through.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I'd like to have one of these, you know, with the top coat on at least, and start doing a bit of peeling.
Yeah.
It's really weird when you start doing it, because you rub it with a little cocktail stick or something like that, and all the paint just comes off. So, and if we don't get the effect I like, then I'll just sand it back and do it again.
Fair enough.
Hopefully it'll be all right. See what this stuff looks like. This is a brand new bottle. I've never taken anything out of this bottle. You probably see why. This is quite orange. Yeah, very orange, in fact. Probably far too orange, as Mick said, for this kind of scenario. I did get, somebody gave me this. Oh, is this the one? No. Somebody was telling me that there was a rusting product that isn't made anymore, and they were telling me it was just there it is, just the best thing ever. If anybody has seen this, called Model Mates. Water soluble, covers dark surfaces. It looks like it's leaked out the bottle.
Well, have an experiment with it and show us the results next time.
I don't think you can get it anymore, Paul. I don't know. But yeah, I might have to play with that as well. And I'll tell you something I have got and I have used to good effect, and that's the Deluxe Materials rusting stuff. Have you seen that?
No.
Go grab it. I managed to get that little wagon off Paul's painting, and it landed on its wheels, so it didn't. I think if you're weathering something like this, you can go crazy with it, because they're just rust buckets, aren't they? These things
can be. Oh yeah.
Yeah. With a bit of salt weathering on there, and a little bit of dry brushing as well, particularly around the top.
One thing people tend to miss is that certainly, you know, sort of pre-BR, a lot of the sole bars were the same colour as the body colour.
Were they? Right, yeah.
Whereas, you know, most of the kits you get, because, you know, the commercial, not so much the kits, but the like Hornby and Daypole, because they're moulded separately, the chassis and the body, is that the sole bars are black along with all the running gear. Whereas in fact, in real life, the sole bars should be the same colour as the body.
Right, okay. I mean, I did actually break this when it fell on the floor, because there's, you probably see there, there's a little bit of white showing just there.
Oh yeah.
You see it? Where it busts the, whatever this is here. Brake lever, that's what that is. Bust the brake lever off. See if I can find it. See if the carpet monster's eating it. Hang on a minute. Go and have a look. Find it, I can stick it back on. Yes. Never to be seen again. Oh. No, no sign of it. I'm assuming it broke off when it fell because I didn't notice it before, but there you go. I've just touched that up with a bit of something. So this was this scenic rust from Deluxe Materials. What you get is you get like basically a tub of iron filings. It's fairly, yeah. This is like a scenic rust powder, which is basically, as I say, sort of iron filings in there, really fine iron filings. And then what you do is you mix it up with, I think this one, yeah, it's a binder, so it's a bit like a glue, like a PVA, and you mix it up into like a sort of metal sludge type stuff, and then you coat it on the model, the object, or whatever it is you're doing, and then when you've done that, that's like PVA glue. That, in fact, I think that's exactly what it is. Then you apply this stuff, which is they call it a developer. It just makes it rust, makes the iron filings rust. And I used that on the exhausts of the Typhoon, and it came out absolutely fantastic. So we'll probably stick a bit of that on this as well. see what, might as well try everything, haven't we?
You know what the answer to that is, Chris? You get some wire wool, put it in a pot with some water and leave it outside for about a month.
Yeah.
And let it rust down. And then you just, till it becomes almost a sludge, and then just mix it in with a bit of very dilute PVA, and then just brush it on.
Yeah. Because I bet that comes out like a rust powder, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, and it's free, you know, virtually. You know, when you use the old Brillo pads up, you know, you just
yeah, absolutely.
let them rust.
Yeah, yeah.
That's recycling, Paul.
Yeah.
I think you've taken that a bit too far.
Right,
that orange rust colour, Chris. That might be useful if you were doing the top of a rail head on a disused rail.
Yeah.
They tend to go quite orange. Or a burnt out car, which would be very modern and urban.
That's true. That's